The thing that attracts me the most about tabletop RPGs, something even more important to me than doing silly goblin voices, is the creative problem solving. And enemies are probably the most common problem these games ask players to solve. So how do we make them fun? That's the question I've been trying to answer for the past 5 years. About a third of my videos on this channel are about various aspects of enemy design, and I know there's a couple thousand of you out there who still use BattleSim, the 5e encounter simulator I created to help with your session prep every single week. And before I even started this channel, I received an Annie Award for Best Monster/Adversary Supplement of 2022. from my book Home Field Advantage, which is a 200-page chunker of a book which gives lair actions to about 300 different D&D monsters. It's been sitting in the top 0.5% bestsellers on DM's Guild for a couple of years now. So if you look at all of my body of work since I started working on tabletop RPGs for a living, I am the monster design guy. This is what I do. And now I'm working on my own tabletop RPG, a post-apocalyptic game called Playful. So after working on this exact topic for the past 5 years, I get to give you my answer. How do we make enemies fun? And you know who else has thought a lot about how to make monsters fun to fight? The sponsor of this video, Malve Studio, a collective of professional game masters. If you've ever wanted to see what games like Blades in the Dark, Cyberpunk, Monster of the Week, or even D&D might look like when they're being run by a professional GM with years of experience, then get in touch with them and they will vet the perfect GM for you based on your preferences. And I have a very good reason to trust them, because the founder of Malve Studios is one of the people who taught me how to run tabletop RPGs. So if you'd like to check them out, get in touch with them and meet your next favorite GM, you can find a link to their website in the video description. But for now, let's talk about enemy design. Now, just as a disclaimer before we get into it, in game design, there's not really such a thing as a universally good game mechanic. Each game has different goals and they're going to need different mechanics to reach those goals. For example, the MCDM RPG Draw of Steel is about heroic fantasy, and so they wanted to avoid what they call the no result, which is a turn where all of your attacks miss, because that doesn't feel very heroic. Whereas my game, Playful, is not trying to feel heroic. It's trying to be a game about creative problem solving. And that tends to work better if the game gives your players some problems to solve. Problems like having an enemy whose armor is so thick that your normal attacks cannot go through it. And on the other side of it, if I show you one of Playful's stat blocks next to a stat block from Shadowdark, for example, you might ask me, why do I need so much text to introduce creative problem solving? Shadowdark has creative problem solving, but it only needs one small paragraph to do it. Well, the way Shadowdark encourages creative problem solving is by making combat extremely deadly and punishing. So if you get yourself into a fight without having set up some kind of advantage for yourself ahead of time, the game is going to punish you for it. And that approach works very well for grimdark and horror games. But while Playful isn't supposed to feel heroic, it's also not supposed to feel like a mid-grinder. It's still a game that tries to tell character-centric stories. So I hope you don't take this video as if I was saying, this is how stat blocks should look like. It's very easy to get trapped into thinking, this is a new game and I like it, therefore this is the future of game design. But that's not how things work. So this video is more about, here is a really cool game that happens to have some pretty new ideas about how to design monsters. The first thing you'll notice about the stat blocks in Playful is probably that on top of the actual stat block, there's this blue thing on the side called interaction options. The idea here is that if you decide to run that monster, you pretty much only need to care about the stat block itself. That is what describes what the monster can do. The interaction options, they're for your player's eyes, and they describe ways that this monster can be interacted with that are unique to this monster in particular. There's probably going to be more in the future, but right now, there's two kinds of interaction options: cold shots and hacks. The way cold shots work is that as part of making an attack, you can decide to make a technique roll with a DC that depends on what part of the target you are aiming at. If you succeed, on top of your attack dealing damage, it also inflicts some kind of debuff that depends on the body part that you targeted. But if you fail, then the entire attack misses and your precious action points are wasted. So for example, let's take this guy, a giant mutant insect that specializes in grappling its enemies and isolating them from their allies. It has 3 cold shot options. First, you can shoot its legs to slow it down, which is very useful since it's a melee opponent in a game where most player characters have ranged weapons. Second, you could try to reduce its armor. If you do this, that means every single one of your allies is going to deal more damage to it. And third, you could make its head explode and turn your attack into a one-hit kill, but because this is a weird mutant insect, it can still continue moving even without its head for a few seconds. So it takes one last turn, and then it finally collapses. Hacks work a bit differently. You still make a technique roll, and if you succeed, the target suffers some kind of debilitating effect. The difference is that hacks have a tier. By default, you can only use tier 1 hacks, which are things like unplugging a cable to turn off a surveillance camera. But there are abilities you can get that give you access to higher tier hacks, and that can make your character look a lot more like a netrunner from Cyberpunk. So for example, let's take this automated turret. By default, the only hack you have access to is that you can disrupt its sensors to give it disadvantage on attacks for 1 round. If you're a slightly more experienced hacker, you could gain the ability to shut it down remotely. And if you're an expert hacker, you could take control of the turret and turn it against the enemies who put it there in the first place. Where it gets interesting is that those don't necessarily need to always work the way you'd expect them to. For example, let's take the Aegis Trooper, a mid-level boss who wears some kind of power armor with a jetpack, some force fields, and integrated laser weapons. The trooper has a couple cold shot options. For example, you could shoot its jetpack to make it fall from the sky and take a bunch of fall damage. But under cold shot options, you can see it has a trait called Tough Armor, which says that in order for a cold shot to work, the players need to land it twice, not just once. And because it has a cybernetic armor, it can also be hacked, even though it's a human opponent. You could force its laser rifle to glitch, for example. So it needs to waste one action on its next turn to reload. But it also has a trait called Military Grade Firewall. If you fail your roll to hack, on top of wasting some precious action points, you take a bunch of electricity damage as punishment. So by having these player-facing interaction options, you can make each fight stand out and feel completely unique without increasing your mental load as a GM, because you pretty much don't even need to read the interaction options to run the monsters. If I had to put it in D&D terms, it's kind of like giving the wizard in your party a new spells list every single fight. The next thing you might notice about the stat blocks in this game is that they don't work in the same way as the player characters do. In Flareful, each character has 10 to 15 action points which they spend to move, attack, or interact with the environment during their turn. But the enemies, they don't use action points whatsoever. They use actions instead, like you would in Pathfinder or DC-20. Each enemy type has 2 to 4 actions they can spend on their turn, and each stat block includes a sentence or 2 of tactical tips to tell you what that enemy type is most likely to want to do with its action. You can still improvise and act in a different way if you want to, but if you follow the advice, you know that the enemy should present a decent challenge to your players. So why this asymmetrical design? Why do monsters follow a completely different set of rules and action economy as the players? Well, it all goes back to what this game is trying to be about: creative problem solving. The action point system that players have to use, it introduces a lot of tactical choices. If a player does a good job of analyzing the current situation and finds a good sequence of actions from the thousands and thousands of choices in front of them, then that player gets to feel like the smartest person in the world for just a few moments. That is where a lot of the fun of tactical combat is. It's that feeling you get when you overcome overwhelming odds using nothing but your wits. But that's where the fun is for the players. For the plot twister, which is what we call the person who runs the game, the situation is a bit different. As the plot twister, you're not the one doing the creative problem solving. You're the one setting up the problems that your players have to get creative to solve. When I run a game, I don't really care to have my tactical skills measured and rewarded. It doesn't make me feel good to spend a lot of mental energy to try to find the best sequence of actions for my monsters. I'm not seeking that rush of overcoming overwhelming odds. I want to be the overwhelming odds and then root for my players to overcome me. So for players, my main goal is to introduce a bunch of tactical choices. But for plot twisters, my goal is different. My goal is to make the monsters as easy to run as possible. To me, the best system when I'm running a game is the one that makes it very easy for me to create challenges for my players that will be fun for them to tango with. The less energy I have to spend on that, the more energy I get to spend on doing silly voices and setting the mood with some cool descriptions. And speaking of setting up challenges, This game includes a whole new mechanic that really helps at doing exactly that, Telegraphed Actions. The idea is that creatures controlled by the plot twister can choose to announce an action they intend to take on their next turn. And when you use an action that has been telegraphed, you have double advantage on every single roll you make as part of that action. So if you telegraph an attack, for example, that means you roll damage 3 times and you take the best result out of the 3. And on top of this, a lot of stat blocks for boss enemies include things like extra effects if an attack was telegraphed. So for example, this security robot uses lassos made of hard light to restrain anyone it considers to be an intruder, and it has an action where it can deal massive electrical damage to every single enemy currently restrained by its lassos. Normally, doing this costs 2 actions, but if it was telegraphed, it only costs 1. So imagine this, on its turn the boss restrains 3 player characters. Then, it starts powering up some electrical coils and the power is slowly creeping up through the lassos. Now, the players have 1 round to free themselves, or they will take a ton of damage. It creates that action movie feeling where the bad guys create a problem and the good guys scramble to find a solution in time. Except here, it's a universal mechanic. The bad guys are always creating a problem. There's always some kind of fire the players need to put out. You can still add secondary objectives to your combat scenarios like rescuing hostages, destroying a big doomsday device before it is fully activated, etc., just like you would in D&D to make combat more engaging in that game. But in Flareful, just with the stat blocks themselves, you already get a ton of opportunities for fun to be had. So yeah, I hope you give it a try and tell me how it goes, because I think you can tell monster design is where I have the most fun as a game designer and as a game master. Right now the bestiary only has about a dozen entries, but my hope is that by next year this thing will have over 100 different enemy types for you to throw at your players. So yeah, if you'd like to know more about this game, make sure you watch the playlist in the video description and that you join my Discord server. We even have a Looking for Groups channel now, where you can find people to play Flareful with. I will see you in the next video, which is going to be a bit special. I'm going to be running the game's starter adventure for a bunch of tabletop RPG YouTuber friends. So if you don't want to miss Val from Corkboards and Curiosities finally get her revenge on Deficient Master in a post-apocalyptic world, make sure you subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Goodbye!